And here we are, lighting the candle, a world that works. I am your host, Bill Carell, and I have with me today two of my really good friends, Lisa Sheehan and also Jan Jeremias. And our fourth compadre is going to be tied up and not able to be with us, so we will carry on. And in the meantime, um, lots going on in the world, an awful lot going on in the world. And I'm kind of interested where you are, our listeners and our empowerment partners are finding yourselves these days. Uh, I have heard reports from several different people in the last 3 to 4 days, the same two words. And so I think what I'll do is I'll lob those out there and see if there's any interest in talking about that. And if there isn't, then we'll move on to something else. But has anybody heard anybody or said themselves that, like, I'm in a really weird place right at the moment?
Because
Just saying.
I just said it right before we went online.
You just reminded me of how many of my friends are in such a reported place. So this would be your opportunity if you would like to, articulate a little bit of what your weird place is like, or maybe we can just talk about weird places in general, whatever you'd like to do.
Well, mine is, I mean, it's one of those not good news days kind of thing. So, um, well, last week I personally went through a biopsy and thankfully found out on Friday that it was benign. But then a friend of mine went into the hospital on Friday and found out this weekend that she's not fine. So it's a weird, like literally a weird space to be in. So,
Yeah.
relieved about myself and wondering about her, kind of thing. She's in great spirits, but she's still in the hospital and awaiting more tests. So, and a procedure. So that's the reason for my weird space.
I can appreciate that and commiserate with you. I was sitting here roughly this time yesterday afternoon when I got a phone call from one of my besties, a gal that I've known ever since we were probably 7 or 8 years old, and another man who we've known since that time period. That she just and very very good Facebook friend. He had posted these staples and a long incision on his spine a week ago from that surgery, but she said he now has been diagnosed with kidney cancer, and so we don't really even know what that is at the moment, and still waiting for more definition on it. Is it one of them? Is it both? And both of us at the same time said, well, if it's just one, you give it up and you move on. People live great lives with only one kidney. So, and at the other end of it is, so the guy is just completely upbeat, Lisa. And I don't know how your friend is, but he is. Don't worry about me. I mean, this is going to be okay. I mean, the Lord has thrown everything that He possibly can at me to just see how tough I can be. Um, and so I think the neat part of being a friend with somebody is, a good way to explain a, a place or a space that you're not used to, that you're unfamiliar with, because it's just like not part of your normal everyday existence. Weird's a good word. It's a good word. It's hard to describe. It's hard to put your finger on, and until you start to describe it.
Yeah, and I'm one of those that steps right in. I'm not, you know, it's her her husband's the one that's having the harder time right now, which
Yeah,
is
right.
typical. But yeah, I have a book on the best things to eat for every dessert disease, and mostly they're smoothies kind of thing, and so I plan on visiting her the second I can. So, but I consider myself kind of strong in these kind of situations. The initial shock is worn off, but um, I mean, sadness comes in and out. But I'm and she's very upbeat, and I told her to watch just comedies. That whole that, that whole prescription.
It's kind of interesting, and it's also human nature. Um, Especially for, I mean, I can't talk about your friend, but my friend is basically saying, hey, I'm happy as a pig, and you know what? I just came through major surgery on my back over the last 2 weeks. And so I'm going to enjoy this minute. I am not going to spend a single minute of time being concerned or worried about what may happen next month or next year. He said, I am here. I'm getting healthier and feeling better. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to take this moment and just, you know, rejoice a little bit that I'm not having pain.
Yeah, and that's the benefit. She's not, and it's pancreatic, so there's no. They shoot. They were. She was told there's no symptoms. Well, except she was turning yellow last Friday, which sent her to the ER. But she's in no pain, so that's the good news right now.
Sure. Well, with all that said, thank you for accepting my invitation. I'm gonna bet that there are some other people that are listening to us right now, and possibly even Jan, that are in a little bit of a weird space.
Right.
There's enough going on in the world that it would challenge the staunchest of people to take a moment every once in a while and let it down, and kind of just experience and let it fully run with you and run you for a minute or two. But I don't know about you. I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and I never did other people's pain well. I was, I mean, I could stand anything for myself, and have up to including cutting my fingers off and all the rest of that sort of thing over the years. But for God's sake, when I was 12 or 13 years, actually when I was 16, and I had to take my younger sister Laura, to the doctors because Tommy had cast a fishing lure into her ear, and so she had this like unexpected earring that looked, I guess it was like a red devil lure, and I was like, breathe, Bill.
And I'm the exact opposite. I'm the exact opposite. I can't handle all my. I'll throw up. I'll pass out, but I can handle anybody else's.
Aren't we a couple of coconuts, huh? Unbelievable. So, Jan,
Yeah.
hi.
Hi.
Are you in a weird
How's
space, Dan?
I don't know if I'd call it weird. That's why I didn't say anything. I think weird is a nicer word than I would use.
Well, I'll
Uh,
close our ears for a second, and you can say the words you want.
no, I just am in a space. Um, you know, I think I'm hearing a lot of, I try not to listen to the news, but people have the have their attitudes do, and when I speak to them, sometimes that panic or whatever they're going through carries through, and so I think I'm hearing a lot from a lot of people about different things from just just the normal, like panic over the economy and panic over whatever, and so sometimes I feel like I'm in this because I tend to take it on or hold it. And so, like, hold it, like, try to hold it for someone else, which I can't do. So I think I'm thinking to myself, okay, I think I'm full right at the moment. I think I've reached my limit at the moment. Mm.
There was a story that oh, one of the forum leaders told about the poison eaters, and that one of the most gracious gifts that a human being can give to another human being is to be able to hold space for their pain. And every once in a while, it's just too damn much.
Mhm.
It's like got to put some back, or I'm letting that go by over here, but I'll be right back with you in a minute or two.
I mean, a few weeks ago, July 4th, I actually talked about holding space for Tonka during the during the fireworks because he was freaking
Yeah.
out. And
Right.
finally, I was just really couldn't do anything, and I just sat there and I did everything I could, and I was there, and I just held that space for him. Like, and I think we've all done that for people. Just hold space. And I think that if anything, I've had quite a lot of people who've lost significant family members like suddenly over the past like 5 months.
Oh,
So that's been that's, I mean, challenging. I find it challenging. I think everybody does, but I find it challenging because there's really no words. It's not like you can say anything that kind of, you know, says enough. Like you can say something, but most of the time it just ends up sounding really dumb. Like you realize that was really, because you want to say something that's really profound and there's really nothing to say, except for the fact that to me you say, "Oh, I really, I'm so sorry, I really don't have the words." Like it almost sounds better than trying to come up with something.
it's definitely perspective shifting, though. I mean, that's what you
Mhm.
get out of. I mean, death has a way of doing that, or or sickness, or somebody you love is down and out. It puts everything else out of the view.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely.
And that's one of those. Once you reach a certain age, we've had ample opportunities to be in that space where you're the one feeling the loss, um, personally and/or secondarily, either somebody that you really consider a very close, like for instance, when my sister got sick 5 years ago, um, I prayed, and my prayer started like this. This is really unacceptable. This is really unacceptable. I can't accept it. So I want you to carry me for a minute, and I want you to help me be the person that I'm not, so that I can live through this. And it sounds overly dramatic to say it out loud, but whoever was listening to me at the time got me through it. But that's all there was for me. This doesn't work. Now fix it. Didn't fix it.
Right. But those prayers are
So,
the good ones. I mean, those to just be completely vulnerable with whoever you're speaking to, and because we're so not used to that, just
Mhm.
admitting that we can't handle it sometimes. So,
I think one of the
you know,
most humbling things is asking for help.
hmm
Um, I don't know about you guys, but I always, for a long time, I found it really, really challenging to ask for help. Like, and I've thought about like different aspects of why that is, for multiple reasons. But it's like all of a sudden, and I've had a friend turn to me one day and said, if it was reversed, would you want to help if you knew somebody needed it? And I said, yes. And she said, okay, just remember that because people want to help. And that kind of shifted it for me a little bit, a little bit. I don't know if I find it easy, but I'm much more likely to do it now than I used to be. But I think the same thing. It's very it's a vulnerable space, I think, to admit sometimes that you
and
need
it's a great friend who just puts it back in your face and basically says, you don't have to go through this alone. But my first thought when you said that was, I mean, for God's sake, if I knew what I needed, I already have it. I have no idea what I need, you
right,
know?
right, right. And there's
So in
situ
those circumstances,
yeah, there are
yeah,
situations like that, Bill, like where you were talking about where you just kind of said, okay, I can't do this. You know, in those situations, you don't know what you need.
what's remarkable though is who I got the most strength from was my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And so, without really dwelling on that for a long period of time, because to be perfectly honest with you, losing a sibling is a terrible thing. Losing anyone you love is, whether it's a fur baby or a two footer or whatever. The whole notion of being fully invested in another living being and soul, and then to have that go missing, I think is probably, for me, in my experience, one of the greatest challenges that a human being is faced with. You know, and it's also something that, even in retrospect, in the rearview mirror, it can be very, very difficult to articulate or to say out loud or identify in a cohesive or an understandable way, even as the speaker or the listener, of what the hell is actually going on from a feeling standpoint and from an experience standpoint.
That's why I
And
got the for some reason this phrase provides some solace to me. It was like that grief is the price of love.
Mm-hmm.
yes,
So to me, that means, if you are suffering grief, it means you love that much too. So that you're lucky enough to have loved and been loved by someone to the point where their loss is affecting you greatly.
Yeah, I agree, and I also love that phrase. The harder that you grieve, the more you loved. And I really, you know, I think that's so true, because then if you look at it in reverse, like, would you have rather not had that love, not to
Right.
suffer? And usually the case is no, right? You'd much rather have had the relationship or the love for whatever it is, and all that added to your life, versus the reverse of not having them in your life at all.
well, that's one of the neat things that I really appreciated about my friend, with him basically saying, um, so please don't feel sorry for me. There's nothing to feel sorry for yet. There'll come a time. But between now and then, can we laugh a little bit? Can we just be light? Can we, have that kind of airy, let's tell stories that we wouldn't want anybody else to know about us, back in the day.
Right.
It's kind of funny because one of my dear friends, he's a man that I've known probably since I was 18 or 19 years old, and I used to go to a place around here called Shabu. Um, you know how when you meet kids when you're in your late teens and early 20s, you meet people, you just really never know how many. You don't even think in terms of, like, I'm going to be almost 70 years old someday, and that dude's still going to be in my life, right? So he posted a meme that said something like, getting to our age means that you can tell your parents all the things you did, even the illegal stuff. So, of course, I had to post, Bruce, do you really think they have that kind of time?
Oh, jeez.
Crack them up. But you just never know who's going to be in your life for a short period of time or for a long period of time. And, I'm coming up on probably 8 or 9 years with Ken. Um, Lisa, we've been hanging out, seems like about 6 years, could be more, could be 7. And Jan, it doesn't seem like you ever weren't around.
Thank you. No, and I think that I wrote that. I'm collaborating on a book, and I wrote that the other day for one of the chapters. It's like, we really have no idea who's going to come in for just a moment, and who's going to come in for, you know, basically years and years and years.
Yeah.
But each have value.
That's one of the poems I love too. To break it down, to put it really simply, is like, yeah, people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Hmm.
And that also helped me with people that I lost touch with, or the friendship just ended. And you know,
Right.
I finally figured out that sometimes they're supposed to just be for that period of time, and then everybody moves on, and it's fine.
It's fine. Right. I have that, I've had that quite a bit through the years. I think because sometimes as we change, you know, whatever the bond just, the bond decreases, and to some extent that outward bond. I mean, you're always somewhat bonded to somebody. You both change from that experience, but there's, you know, where you don't meld as much anymore.
Mhm.
You don't speak the same language, or you don't hold this.
or even just be around each other. Circumstances change and you get busy doing this, that, and the other thing. And then suddenly you've moved away, they've moved away. And the interesting part of it is that speaking of weird space, uh, it's the the strangest things can bring up memories of people that I've forgotten about, you know?
Mhm.
And it's like, picking up some things in my basement, Um, I haven't really given this my full attention, but you know that deal where there's kind of a feng shui um, test of the things that you have in your life. If you pick it up and it doesn't give you joy, you should get rid of
Mhm.
it. And what's really interesting about that is what those artifacts have tagged with them. They're like sticky notes. I mean, there's stuff in my basement that's we've been here for 44 years, and some of that stuff's been here for over 100.
How would
There's
you get rid of it?
things. I mean, who has an 1890s apple peeler in their basement? I got one
You
of
do.
those. I
But
mean, it's
then
an old farm. Yeah.
and then there's the stuff you find that just, when I moved last year and I went through things, and you find these things that are just like, like, like cards that my niece made me when she was 3, kind of thing. And, took a picture of it and sent to her. And now she has her own kids. And she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you still have that,
Yeah.
kind of stuff, you know. And, those kind of things, whether you save them or not, just when you open them, you're like, just the memories come flooding back.
My whole condo is full of things like that. I mean, I just found I'm a collector, I like to say, but I don't let go of anything. I have my name tag from my first job at Caldor.
Oh my goodness.
And that's just one of the things. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got rid of a lot of stuff when I moved. It was like a hugely, like a lot of stuff. Some stuff afterwards, I thought maybe I shouldn't have gotten rid of that. But
That's my fear. That's my big
you
fear.
know, but you learn that you just, you do. You're just like, okay, oh well, because you just realize. But yeah, and then there are things that you realize you'll never let go of, and most of those things hold memories that you just don't want to let go of.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, we got one of those circumstances happening. Um, we actually got a contract on our lake home about 6 weeks ago, and the gal that's buying it is just such a sweetheart. Uh, we're completing the rentals that we had for the summer. This is our peak period where we get the most per week and everything. And she said, "Yeah, we'll close 2 days after the last rental that you've got right now, and that's coming up on August 15th. But we have 26 years worth of memories in that place with clients, business associates, family, neighbors, HOA meetings. I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of people that have come through that place. And so we're going to have to decide what we're going to take with us and what we're going to leave behind. And I think what we're going to do is we're probably going to be very ruthless.
Mm.
Um, We will not allow Ruth to come in at all. She's just going to have to stand outside. We're going to be ruthless, and we're going to pick up a few things that are family related. Um, we have a crockware um, jar that was made to commemorate our wedding, and it says Bill and Janet Correll, established 1976. That's going to come with us. We got pictures of my grandfather that I never met because he passed when he was 45 years old and when my mom was 9. But one of them is he's got this, like about 15 pheasants, half in either hand, and a cigarette butt hanging out of his mouth, taken in the backyard, near the clothesline. And then there's another one that's probably got 50 fish on it, where he's standing there holding one end of the stringer, and it's got about 5 feet long, and he's got a cigarette butt hanging out of the corner of his mouth. And everyone in the family that ever sees those pictures, who they never met him, they actually feel like they know him. He's the same exact guy in both pictures, and they were probably taken years apart. So that's going to be it. Those will be the few.
Oh.
And we'll probably just say to the gal when she takes over, this will be up to you to decide what to do with it. You'll either keep it and continue using it if you're going to continue having vacation guests, or figure it out, because these things served us well for all these years, and now we don't have a place for them. I've been working on this speech for a while. I don't know if you can tell or not, but it would be just so simple to rent a truck and then bring it over here and put stuff in the barn or in a room, have one more room full of all this stuff we're not using, I don't know. But yeah, objects have memory. I mean, it's like there's some energy that's contained in it that just triggers a reaction, a response, or some memory. Pictures, photographs do the same for me. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
One of my the same dear friend who called me to let me know about our friend also found some old photographs of the first organized football team that I played on when I was 12 years old, the Ledyard Falcons. And so we've got pictures of like 30 guys, all within a year or two in the age, all of our coaches behind us. And then she had these wonderful pictures of the cheerleaders, and she was the tallest one, and then there was a shorter one and a shorter one, all the way down to my sister, who was probably 4 years younger than Linda. And she doesn't look like my sister in that. She looks like no other photograph that I've ever seen of her, but it's her. It just has to be. So I posted those on Facebook, and about 25 friends. Oh yeah, I'm in that picture. That's my brother. That's my my dad. But 12 years old, number 52, over at the right hand side. And there are some people that, for the life of me, I have no clue and no idea who they are. And that seems weird because I will have had to have spent the better part of a couple of years in organized sports with them. What happened to those brain cells?
You never know which ones are going to go, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
I would say to somebody, if I have to remember that something's going to go and I have no control over what that will be. Not anymore.
Yeah. I was just going to say, and how does that make you feel?
It's kind of freeing in some ways because I can, somebody said, because you're at the age where you forget words, your words are leaving you. And so somebody said, if you forget the word key, then that's all right. Or you forget a word. If you forget what keys are for, then you have a problem. So that's another thing that gives me some solace too.
Yeah. So, like most people, we've all either are dealing with or have gone through our personal getting to know Alzheimer's and dementia. And but what's really interesting about it is that I read as much as I possibly could when my cousin's father about six or 7 years ago was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and there were the jokes, and whenever you had a short term memory lapse or something like that, my other cousin would call them halfheimers, and it's halfheimers because you haven't forgot everything, right?
Jeez.
So those were the early days. As it progressed, it became really very difficult, for my cousin to be around her dad. Um, it was, she said, the only solace that I can take out of this is that he has absolutely no idea until he sees it in my face. So the game is to go through this as if everything is just perfect and ducky and exactly the way it's supposed to be.
Hmm.
And I think that takes a special kind of wiring. I mean, that takes a very, very deep generosity, in my opinion, to 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 play act. And when your father asks, "Who are you again?"
Yeah, to get beyond the
What are you
correction
doing?
stage. Yeah, you have to get
What are you
beyond that.
doing in my room?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the same kind of play acting goes back to what you started out the conversation with you when you have a friend that's or someone in your life that's ill and they're upbeat, not letting your own emotions color the situation or color that like color, get brought into the relation like into that exchange, which the point is really hard because you're upset and it's tearing you apart, but yet let's say they're in a space of, okay, I'm gonna go for this, I'm gonna be okay or whatever, I'm gonna handle it, and not letting that color is the same kind of sometimes that same kind of you know almost charade that you have to put on for them, and that also takes a kind of strength.
That's a friend of mine. He's so good at it. He's been dealing with it, and it took him forever to get to the point of accepting how his mom was, and being in the facility. And he just did like a 180 and turned into, like you said, he play acts every time with these people. Can I read you a short correspondence with him and a resident?
Would you please?
The resident, a hand on mom's shoulder. How does mom seem to be doing? Me. She seems to be a little sleepy today. How do you think she's doing? Resident. She takes a seat on the couch next to me and takes a deep breath. I've been meaning to catch up with you. Me. Is everything okay? Resident. I'm not sure you know this, but everyone on this floor has Alzheimer's. Me. Really? Well, thanks for letting me know. Resident. You know your mother lives on this floor, right? Me. I do. Oops. Hold on. Oops. Hold on. Oh, gosh. Oh, that's bad. Talk amongst yourselves.
Okay.
Are you doing a mid-course correction here or a little edit?
No, I lost the text. I mean,
I hate that.
I know.
Where
I'll find it.
I
where does it go when it's not?
well, it reminds me of I had a you know I had a really I have a really close friend whose son was ill, and rule was that you could never cry in his room. That was the rule. No matter what, you had to be happy in the room. And I often wonder if I was in a situation like that, whether I would be able to keep that kind of because I cry all the time for everything. I'm like sitting there,
So
and
I found
that
it.
was oh okay, but that was the rule. You couldn't come in.
Yeah, and this resident was a nurse in her career, so she's at the this nurses station usually to greet people too. Okay, so me, well, you know your mother lives on this floor, right? Me, I do. Resident pauses for a few seconds. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? Me, oh, you think mom has Alzheimer's? Resident, we do. Me, well, I suspected something was going on. Resident, she's happy here, and we take good care of her. Just make sure you keep visiting. Sweetest thing. But if he didn't react that way. Another time he came in with his suit and they all thought they were at a wedding and he was the minister and that they were drinking wine and juice. And he said, "We can't drink anymore." And she said, "Well, that's okay. We're staying at the hotel." So great.
So whatever your reality is,
Yep.
rock, just rock it. Have a ball.
Or whatever somebody else's reality is. Rock it. Go with
Mhm.
it.
Go with it.
Yep.
Yeah, our experience with another dear friend that we've known for over 40 years. It started leaving her about 3 or 4 years ago, and first it was just some forgetfulness, and it was post-op, right, having had brain surgery, um, and then heavy onset of Alzheimer's and all that. But the funny part of it was, and this is a true story. I mean, we would ride around, with her husband, and every time she said something that wasn't accurate, he would correct her every single time. You know better than that, whatever, right? So he went away. He was gone for months, and then there was a time where the three of us, Jan, my wife, and our friend, would drive around together, and we never had any conversation about anything that would require her to remember anything.
Hmm.
Do you want to know what she was really good at? Remembering shit. It was unfreaking believable what she would cough up about what she knew about. But when the minute that she felt a little bit of pressure, like the need to perform or something of that nature, so it's an incredible thing, to be around. And if you love them, it's easier to do. I'll tell you that from my own experience. You if you want someone to have a really nice time, and they've now mentioned the same thing 6 times in the last 20 minutes, you have to just have that amazement and joy each time and just go, that is the most amazing thing I've ever heard in my life.
I mean,
And then it's
now,
not phony. It's like you really are so happy that they're able to communicate something to you and share a moment. It might as well be the only time they ever said it. You know what I mean?
and I was gonna bring that up in when you're in conversation with someone who is repeating themselves, you know,
Yes.
uh, the last thing that that person wants to hear is, "Oh, you told me that already." Because most of the time, obviously, it makes them feel bad, and when you make them feel bad, you feel bad. So it's like, it's like, then why? And so you just let them say what they're going to say.
And appreciate every moment, because there'll come a time when you will think that was, I mean, that from the movie, As Good as It Gets, right? What if this is as good as it gets? Would you prefer not to be spending time with a loved one, or are you going to just get the most out of this and just squeeze all the juice out of it?
Hmm.
I highly recommend that. Find a way to squeeze every last bit of juice out of it.
I think for a lot of people, though, the ones you love the most is the hardest ones to do that with. Because
Hmm.
I remember my dad with my grandmother, and she would see pictures moving or something different on the TV, or it wasn't even on. And he had the hardest time at the beginning saying, "Ma, there's nothing there. Don't worry about it." Or strangers outside. I mean, that's another one that you kind of have to deal with in different ways, but ones you're closest to, because I think you can't accept it too. It's a form of denial as well.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's also a little bit of, obviously, an affirmation of age and the fact that they're not going to be here forever. So the whole idea of, it's almost like you start to mourn before they actually start to go, because you realize that you know, that they don't live forever. And then all of a sudden, that's the reality check.
And with those diseases, they say you lose them twice. You
Right, exactly. I think it's the hardest thing as I watch my parents age,
Mhm.
and you see, and I see what they're not able to do or what happens. But then I also look at it on their end, because I was very close to my grandmother, who I practically lived with, and then I'm still very close to my parents, and I think them seeing themselves and what they can't do anymore is
Right.
really hard. And I remember my grandmother was absolutely adorable, and I remember she had a girl that came in eventually and lived in. But she was determined. She lived in Manhattan. She lived in, to go downstairs like, you know, a number of flights to go do the laundry. And I used to say to her, Graham, like, let the girl do your laundry. And she was determined not to give it up because it was something she could still do.
Hmm.
And she was not going to give it up. And for me, I kept on saying to her, I would love for someone to do my laundry. Like, you know, can you give her, like, can you send her to me, kind of thing. But, when you're kind of grasping at things as they slowly go away that you're not able to do anymore, you kind of cling to the things that you still can do. And I think as we watch our parents or someone we love sort of, where that happens, where they're not able to, it's sometimes challenging for us.
And it can be a sacred blessing.
Uh,
It really can be, it could be the ultimate service, the ultimate being useful to another person in the way they need you to be useful. And sometimes it just, there's no other words for it. It just pisses you off,
well,
I
just
think the heart. Go
sorry, go.
ahead.
No, I was going to say sometimes you just learn when you need space. It's kind of, I don't, you know, here I am, the pet person, so I compare a lot to pets. It's kind of like when your pet chews something they're not supposed to chew. And like when I used to crate Tonka when that happened, but I would never do it when I was angry because otherwise they look at crating as a punishment. So it's kind of like
Right.
you got to put them in the crate and then you leave the room or you go outside for a second just so you can like decompress and take a whole bunch of deep breaths to say, okay, it's just a whatever. And, like the day he chewed the wall. And I was like, you have 1,000 bones and you chewed the wall. Like, why the wall? Like, and my friend said, because it was their mom, and I sat there and then I put it back in the crate. I was just like, had to go outside, sit on the front stoop and go, okay, it's just an object. It's not a big deal. But, it's like you have to sometimes step out of the scenario a little bit because you are, like you said, you are human and you just got to give yourself a moment to just like decompress, breathe, scream if you want to scream, if that helps, whatever is going to work for you. And then you go back in when you're a little calmer.
I can just hear Tonka answering you in dog.
Yeah,
Why the
exactly.
wall? Why indeed?
Why indeed? Yes, that's very him. Why indeed?
It's a mystery.
Yeah.
Animals have got the best way in the world of communicating. And, you know, when they get old, they're no different than people.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
start losing a half a step and, they start getting forgetful. But, I'm not going to go there because, the last three pets that we lost are the most difficult for me to relate to because they were um, joined at the hip buddies that we spent 15, 18 hours a day during COVID or, before COVID. But mom was off doing census stuff or, with the post office or whatever. And me and the boys, were one was right up here on my shoulder, the other one was down on my side, and they never got more than about a foot and a half away from me. I don't care where I went in the house, I had these two shadows everywhere. They were the old men's club. That's what I called us because at that point, one was 19 and the other one was 17.
Hmm.
All right, so that's what there is to say about that. So, how are we doing with the weird space distinction?
Well, look where it took us too.
Yeah,
Well, I'm thinking about what I said last is when you're in that weird space at times, maybe you just need to step out and, like a kid has a timeout, like you need a timeout. And then you just need to say, okay, I need a few deep breaths and a few moments to decompress.
That's one of those times too when work can take you right out of, which it's like a nice place, not a nice place to go, but a place to go where you can forget about it because you just get so engrossed in your work. So sometimes it's a nice saving grace to have something to do when weirdness is all around you.
I mean, I think it can be work and can be anything.
Yep.
I used to, my sister-in-law cooks when she's feels like that. You know,
Mm.
my family comes from a family of cleaners. We clean. So I always tell my sister-in-law it's a perfect match. My brother cleans and she cooks. So it's just like, but yeah, it's like we all have something that helps us kind of get into a zone of like
Yep.
just that kind of balance.
Yeah, there's another aspect I think to the weird space too, is that because typically it's so unfamiliar, you kind of wonder if you're ever going to get out of that weird space sometimes, you know? And then unless you are really a highly trained human being that can always remember that the best way to experience life is full on and allow it to just run with you or run you and until it doesn't, um, a lot of us resist it. A lot of us, like you said earlier, Jan, I think the denial portion of it, that you know this isn't happening or I don't react this way to things when they do happen, but yet let's check the facts. Here you are and this is what you're doing, and yeah, I guess we could call it weird, you know. So
I think I noticed though that I did tell myself it's okay to have all these multiple reactions to the same piece of news, and
yes.
to be able to go from sadness to what can I do to help kind of thing in a heartbeat, but to honor the other feelings I had before I got there.
And you know what, being the work in progress that you are, that you're always in that space of utilizing yourself as a fully functioning adult human being, you know, there many of us never get beyond that point where we're just angry and upset and satisfied that that's how we're feeling, and then we operate from there, and then we don't understand why our lives don't work all that well, you know. And yet if you could fully let it run, maybe you need to be a little angry and upset
Hmm.
for a minute and then see what else is there and see what else is there and see what else is there. And I guess, you know, people that are really, really well trained will turn that into how can I help? And then there might even be other possibilities. And the truth of the thing is there's no right way to live except for an authentic expression of who you are. And
I
that's a challenge that I put for everybody. Go ahead, Jane.
No, I was going to say, and there's nothing wrong with revisit. I mean, at points you might revisit some of those things that you already went through and processed because reality reaches different levels. It's like an onion. All of a sudden, it goes deeper, and you have a deeper realization of something that happens or something that and then you process a little more, and then you're ready to go and help again. And then, so I think the processing part of it happens constantly as I think because we as humans um sort of process things. We don't necessarily process something and then it's done. Yeah. I mean, at least I never have. you know I
I
it
think
comes
that's
with
why the
age.
spiral thing is
That's right.
because I like picturing like you could be on that side of the spiral and then be dealing with something but you can see across and you went, oh crap, I forgot about that, or there it is again, but so you can constantly revisit it. But another thing that helps me understand that by thinking just because you dealt with it again doesn't mean it's not in your field and can come
Mhm.
back with any given moment. But then, like you said, to deal with it from a new perspective, which literally is what you're doing. So you can you learn from each time you look at it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but the spiral is kind of nice. I love that image
Yeah.
because It's kind of like taking a hike and you always go on the same route in the same direction. And then when you reverse it and you go in the opposite direction, the hike is really new because everything looks different going from the other side. And so in a spiral, it's the same thing because you're looking at it from the opposite side of the spiral.
Yep.
Very interesting. I've been doing this thing called Noom for just about a year,
Mm.
and they get into all sorts of different psychology experiments, distinctions. And so they were there's this one section where we were talking about emotions and feelings, right? Feelings and emotions. And the expression, so they start off with there's like a helix of 6 different types of emotions, right? And then they go, well, wait, there's more. And then they create another loop around that, another wheel, if you will, where now there's 28 in that loop. And they go, but wait, there's more. And so then now there's a third one that has like 60 different, these are all different words having to do with an emotional response that
Hmm.
are each level is a further distinction of fear or hate or anger or joy or love, from the inside wheel. And when you get out here and you go, it's a lot of work, to sit here and try to decide which one of these I'm actually feeling. But yeah, well, now wait. There's like 18 different. Oh, so we're coming off of joy here. That's pretty cool. So the neat part of it is that when people live a life where they're a little bit more curious about what they're feeling, as opposed to I've trained myself in a lot of instances to go from here to there without taking the steps in the in between, right? And everybody who's an expert in this area knows what a really bad idea that can be, simply because that work that you didn't get, to get the answer where I'm okay now and I'm back in service and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. It's like Lisa seeing the other side saying, yeah, but no, I'm hurt. It's like, damn it, I'm 68 years old and crap like that should not bother me at all. And this has to be a misunderstanding. There's no way another human being who really loves me would behave that way and leave me in this space, right? Unless they know that I'm probably, with the in crowd and I can take it and there's other people that can't. And, so there's all that, the thought distortions going on about it. And then you go ask the question and they go, what? What? Oh, that's what you think happened? Well, thank God.
Right.
I would much rather be wrong about my entire perception than walk around thinking that it cost me a relationship with somebody I really love. You know what I mean? And those steps, missing the steps, where each one of those steps is a place to go back and just check back in and say, well, what do you think happened here? But having so many different words to describe your emotions and your feelings. And in my upbringing, guys were not rewarded a whole hell of a lot until we got to the sensitive new age guy, sort of in the 1980s, right? When when it was more interesting uh, for men to wear cologne and maybe have an earring, or when it didn't mean anything, or just be in a space where they could actually talk to some other people about what's going on underneath and how does that make you feel, and what does it seem like to you when you have those feelings, and you know that is a healthy conversation for people to have, and especially in a group scenario where there's a family at stake or there's somebody who's hurting and everyone wants to know how they can help. Sometimes just being in a conversation with other family members that are going through something similar at the same time can be very powerful.
Well, I don't know if women at that time were much different than men. Because I look,
Probably.
because I like as you said, men weren't allowed, but or were it wasn't whatever. before the new age, and I don't know how much women actually voiced the way they felt either, you know.
Well, they certainly didn't with men all that often.
They didn't with men, or they didn't, especially in the home setting. I don't think they did.
I
No,
think
everybody
you're,
had to be perfect in their roles. In
What?
their roles. Everybody had to be perfect in their assigned roles.
That's right.
and funny enough, none of us got the manual.
Nope. Nope.
Nope,
There wasn't one.
there
Yeah,
wasn't one.
you know, I mean, everyone knows, right? You just
Yeah.
know.
Right.
And yet we all, somehow ended up getting the manual.
Forced into the
And the
role.
people that wrote the manual had the power, right? I'm still not sure that men are from Mars.
Well, different space, anyhow. Different place in space.
Well, the really interesting thing about all of those metaphors is, and we talk about this an awful lot, whenever you can use a mind picture to allow someone to imagine, and to place themselves in that, it's one more tool in the kit that, no, maybe it doesn't work for you in this instance, but just know you've got it available to try on at another time. And then it might even be that it's like a suit jacket that will never fit you. It's just way too small or way too big, or you don't like that color at all. And, and there's, you know, I don't think there's like a set of master drawings for weird space either.
Nope. Thank God.
Yeah. It's where you kind of doggy paddle around for a little while you're feeling a little bit less than fully empowered, or less, like a little off your game, and like being in the space of just not knowing.
Which is sometimes hard to do too. I mean, I think, like we were saying about the roles that you fit in, and what you tell yourself how you should be, or I should be strong, I should be smart, I should know this better, and to be able to get out of that space and say, no, I can't always be at 100 or even 90 sometimes. You know what I mean? I am allowed to be below that, and it's fine. And it takes a long time for me, it took a long time to even understand that possibility, that it was possible for me to be human, basically, and let others be human too.
Well, I think that's the gift. But I was thinking about that this morning, as I was, thinking about something for myself, and basically it was the admitting of like not being perfect, in this perception that, for whatever reason we feel like we need to be, and then realizing, well, hey, you're not.
No, that's what and then let your weird flag fly.
That's right.
Yes.
Exactly. I love that.
Sometimes it looks like long hair that
Yeah.
you almost cut.
Right, whatever it is,
Yeah.
or short hair.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, I think these days our freak flag looks a little different than it did 40 or 50 years ago.
I know. That's why. That's why I chose weird instead this time.
And there's lots of other synonyms to weird, which we probably haven't got time to get into today. But I think the whole point is that um, being in a weird space, place, race, whatever, is not something to fight with. It might be a little something to ask questions from. And in many cases, maybe what you learn is, when I have no feeling of power, I'm left with these feelings. And sometimes the only thing that you can do is just get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's not a bad way to get out of it either. It's almost like, in a car, when you are driving on ice and you step on the brake, in order to keep from swerving and the car turning in circles, you take your foot off the brake. You don't do anything else. You just take your foot off the brake. Same thing with the gas. Take your foot off the gas. A little weird? Yeah. All right. Well, let's see what this does, Well, anyhow, any other final wrap it up into a package and put a nice bow on it thoughts, ladies?
That was mine.
Well, based on what you said, for that weird, and maybe you just are okay with the weird, I'm like, maybe you put a bow on that weirdness, like if you're packaging it up or whatever. Just kind of,
I like it.
in some way, kind of, celebrates is a weird word for it, but maybe you just, you just
Well, let me
honor.
put it to you. What I'm left with is the feeling that your weird looks like you've got it all handled to somebody who's got a really weird,
And maybe take the time to reach out to somebody with your weirdness, just to be heard.
Yeah, check in a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. And so you at home, I think if you come away with anything at all, I recommend that you let your weird flag fly every once in a while and just see what it's like. And also make a little bit of an inquiry out of it, a little bit of investigation, a little curious, what's up with that, right? So here we are, lighting the candle, a world that works. And once again, ladies, thank you so much for your contribution to my life. I love both of you madly. And I can't wait to do this again next week. Good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. Bye-bye for now.
Ready?
Have a good week.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a world that works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch us each week, as well as the rest of the network, at exvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.